Welcome to Talk to Brazil with Tom Reaoch, the business connector to business in Brazil. Welcome to Talk to Brazil, the business connection, the world's first English language internet radio program about business in Brazil since 2009 and now in podcast format. I'm Tom Reaoch, an American living in Brazil for many years and known as the King of Networking, and talking from my studio in Campinas, São Paulo, Brazil. Today's guest is Evas, and we recently connected on LinkedIn. Eva is a digital brand storyteller, a data architect, and founder of Ripplr, which is specializing in market research and strategy in China. Eva has been a cross-cultural storyteller since the age of 8, having lived in the United States as a child and later educated in Taiwan. The constant switch from English to Mandarin Chinese and vice versa has been part of her daily life. As an international business developer, her clients come from a variety of places: the U.S., Canada, France, Sweden, Finland, the U.K., Singapore, China, as well as Brazil. And Eva joins us today from Shanghai. So with that, hello, Eva, and welcome to Talk to Brazil.
Hi, Tom. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Thanks
for podcast.
Thanks for being part. And Eva, I saw your, as I mentioned, we hooked up on LinkedIn. I saw your site, saw your profile, and what really attracted me was the fact that you're a digital brand storyteller. What I feel most people think of storytelling is something you tell children, right? But storytelling in business is much different, So tell us about what you do, how you do it, and how you create your stories for clients.
Yeah, so in terms of business, I come from probably a slightly different background, being an English major in college and just being an avid writer throughout my education. What I do is basically help brands to create stories that engage in their customers and empower their customers, to put it simple, creating that ripple effect.
So that's the ripple.
Yes.
And how do you actually apply that? How do you interact with companies to understand their story?
It's fairly straightforward, and I haven't seen any other companies, because I have a lot of friends who are business owners in Shanghai and across China. I haven't really seen this model, but it seems to work very well for me and my team. What I do is I will take an existing international brand, like we connect, right? There's a point of contact. And then we start with translation, like translating their website content, or translating for the Living Building Challenge, which is a recent client and ongoing client. Is we helped out with their Living Building Challenge certification standard manual, which is like 70 plus pages. And from that translation, you get an in-depth understanding of what they are about, their beliefs, their practices, their case studies, how you can better implement them into a market like China.
And then in doing that, in doing a translation, do you adapt it culturally?
Yeah, through the translation, because I'm sure you're also very familiar with this, Tom, is that because you are in your brain, as you translate, you also take into consideration the word flow. So this term in English, would it mean the same in Chinese? If it doesn't, how can I better say it, describe it in the way that my Chinese friends and, business partners would understand?
Yeah, because from brands, as my feeling is that brands are probably more subjective than they are objective. So a person has, in any culture, they have to develop a feeling for whatever that brand is. How do you adapt a feeling for a brand to Chinese? You mentioned when we were talking before the show something like makeup. How do you feel that in a story?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go back to like the origins of branding, I think it comes from the cattle ranches, how they would stamp the cattle to identify A from B. So that kind of evolved into branding in the U.S. So what we've seen is, a company that has a strong brand has a strong core value. It's like the passion behind the brand that relates to their customers, and makes the customers feel engaged with the brand to follow their news updates, their stories, their product updates, so on and so forth. So what we were talking about makeup, it's, I guess, if this, what you said about like small to medium enterprises, a lot of that goes into social media. If you look into the social media hemisphere, let's say for Instagram, a successful makeup brand would mean that you would have like the founder who is really into makeup. He or she most likely would be, someone who would put on makeup on a daily basis because that's something she likes and she thinks is part of her style or even identity. So through that, she creates a makeup brand. And through her social media posts, her stories, her communications, oftentimes it's really just a post of passion. Like, why did I create this type of, I'm not even too familiar with the words, like, let's say lipsticks, because Chinese women, they do like red lipsticks. Why did I create this shade of red lipstick, for one? And through her like communication, it could be, a photo with text description or a video clip. Then people will like engage and think that, oh yeah, I think I also like that kind of lipstick color or that shade.
Well, one thing you mentioned is interesting. You're talking about the social media in China. Here in Brazil, just for an example, we have a certain differential between the younger persons are more adept to using you mentioned Instagram and many other different medias to communicate. Older persons, not necessarily so much, or they focus more from the communication portion of that. How is that in China? Is social media used across the board?
You mean the older generation?
Yeah, for different generations.
I mean, right now we're experiencing a pandemic. So what I've been seeing on my WeChat moments from my friends and, business contacts, as well as the professional WeChat groups with their, big corporate reports, is that there is a rise of online content consumption. Like people, because you're either social distancing or you're staying home to, be safe. So you have this, let's say extra time, and if you can't go out, then you go online. It's like it's a good option to be online when you're at home. And so people are consuming more online content. And you see this in every age group.
Well, I think I see that, but I think that's sort of a positive thing as we look to the future and come back to whatever the new normal is going to be. So that if you do have more people using it, the digital mindset, as it's called, will change across generations. So storytelling has to also adapt to that, doesn't it?
Yeah. For me, storytelling has been something I've always enjoyed, ever since a little kid. I was in the U.S. Until third grade, so our class teacher would read like chapter books to the whole class of students who would be situated on a carpet. Some would, kind of lie down, just be in a comfortable position and enjoy the story. That's where I learned about the wizard lion in the closet. I think I might have said that wrong, but it was I recently created into a movie. Mm-hmm. The Lion, Witch, and it's a pretty good chapter book.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then I have like mommy friends. So oftentimes, and I like exercising. My dad's a sports professor. So oftentimes, I like to convey like brands that advocate like health, wellness, all the way up to smart cities. So just like content that is constructive to the society. Yeah, and I think through just chit-chatting with my friends and also kind of like coaching some of the entrepreneur communities in Shanghai and other cities, I would talk about like how to create like positive content to post online, because if you really think about it, it really is, it comes from you, right? So it's what you think that is conveyed into online content. So if you're creating something, that's actually part of your responsibility.
Right.
And you should create something that, you know, I think ideally is something people will remember you of. Yeah.
So I think the two words that I bring out, you said it has to be personal. And one of the things you set up at the beginning, you have to make it a comfortable situation, a comfortable setting. So if you put your listener or your eventual client in a comfort zone, they will assimilate your story better, correct?
Yes.
So
Could you repeat?
How do you make for a comfortable situation when we're, just for an example, working with two different languages? How do you make a foreign company comfortable to tell a story in China?
A key factor is that the representative of that company or that brand has to have China experience. Like the person needs to be in China before, or else I've done projects for clients who were outside of China, and they've been working on the international market and wanted to enter the China market. So we did like a translation project for an American cryptocurrency firm. But they're still in the international market after we did the translation, which was a month ago. Mm-hmm. So, and this is mainly because they don't have any China experience. The brands who actually have a lasting impact in China is when someone from the headquarters has been in China and has on-the-ground experience in China. Because, you know, you can download WeChat as an app from your country, mm-hmm. and be connected to, you know, your Chinese contacts and business activities outside of China. But that is different from being on the ground in China.
Right.
And we hear these stories over and over again from, you know, expats.
So being able to have your story told in China, you really need to evaluate a connection like yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I've always, like, you know, having a business for over 3 years, you like eventually realize this is something you've been doing throughout your life. Mm-hmm. Like I've always been like a cross-cultural ambassador. Right. I was telling, you know, a Chinese fable during Moon Festival to my dad's American professor friends who were visiting Taiwan at the time.
So that's an important point too, a cross-cultural bridge. And how is this, as you look forward now to China, we see from the information that we're receiving here, Brazil specifically, and we're talking now the new normal after the pandemic is starting to pass. What do you see the business future being for small and medium-sized companies in China?
You mean the existing ones in the market right now, or the ones?
Yeah, things coming back. Things are starting to come back. That's what we're hearing. Do you see that?
Yeah. I get updates every hour, you know, in Shanghai, Beijing, Shenzhen, even Chengdu. And like the F&B industry was one of the first industries to be impacted by the pandemic, right? Because people can't go out to dine. You dine in, or you cook at home, and people are now, the restaurants and bars are opening in Shanghai, and then it was news from yesterday and today that kindergartens are going back to school in Shanghai and Chengdu.
Oh, that's an important point, because that's still one of the issues here in Brazil being discussed is if schools should reopen and how they should reopen. So if you have the children back in school, that's back to what you were saying. They can become comfortable. I'm sure they all have a lot of stories to tell. Yeah,
I should mention that they're back to school on June June 2nd, but the news came out over the past 48 hours.
So how do you feel? How is your comfort zone? Are you out and around a little bit?
Yeah. I go to cafes, try to catch up with friends, over weekends when I step aside from work. And but my business has always been online. So let's say we're the more fortunate that can be working as usual during the new norm.
Well, I agree with you because that's what I do. I've been over the years when I started my radio program and now in podcast. I've always been for all these years working out of a home studio. So the fact of having to be quarantined, isolated at home for me is just basically the same. And for persons, that's important. Most persons were rushed into a situation that they weren't prepared for. But as you mentioned, that's been your business for years, so you're comfortable with it.
Yes.
And you've always told stories across the world and through different cultures, so I think that's a plus that we have. No, seriously, I know a lot of professionals are still trying to understand how to communicate, how to hook up Wi-Fi, how to be able to talk and convey stories.
Yes, I'm smiling, laughing as a form of agreeing.
So that is also important for the starting up or restarting businesses. That's another story to tell, I guess, is how to restart your business after this, and be that in China, be that here in Brazil.
I don't know if you read about this yet, but I've noticed a couple of news articles in the past week about tech firms embracing just working remotely, working from home. This is something, generally more acceptable to tech firms for their staff. Because basically I think work involves stable Wi-Fi and a good functional laptop.
Yeah, yesterday I interviewed a Brazilian who has an executive search company, and I interviewed him on my other podcast, which is BBN Brazil in Portuguese. And that was one of the points that he mentioned and brought up, is the fact that many companies plan to adopt home working environments as a permanent situation.
Yeah.
But the professionals need to adapt their home culture to that, because obviously on a temporary basis, it's one thing to be home with children, a dog, or not having an infrastructure to be able to work from. Another thing is to have that as a permanent situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually, I think it was a celebrity family who was trying to do like a program, like video shooting from their home, and eventually they had to kind of clear out a space, maybe at their kitchen. I kind of forgot, but they were talking about how there are different interferences when you're at your home. But I think if you actually put the effort in creating a space just for work, that it has been working for a lot of professionals and for me.
And that's why it's for me. I get into my studio, which is a room, and I feel like this is my business, and it's a physical space that's although it's in the house, it's separate. Open and close the doors, and I can say, well, I'm working. And I think that for the mental situation, for the mental comfort, I feel personally that's important.
Yeah, for me, so my work spans across a variety of things, like from business development to client follow-up, but in between I'm also hugely involved in content creation. So when you're creating content, when you're writing, to create the flyer or the video script, oftentimes you just need a quiet space and get into the right mood, maybe put on the right background work music for concentration. And that actually helps me be creative and productive at the same time. I don't think it's the same experience for me to be situated in an office or like what is popular nowadays is to be like at a co-working space.
And I could feel that. Part of what I felt, having spent much of my life in companies and in offices, they can be invigorating, but they can also be confining, and they can also be restrictive, principally on the lines of creativity.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked for a medium-sized company in Taipei. I was in international sales business development position, and I've worked from a cubicle a couple of times in my 20s, after graduating from college. And I think it depends on your personality. If you're someone who likes to do a certain routine of work tasks, that might be a perfect fit for you. But for someone who is constantly learning and developing new skills and, just curious about the world in general, having a cubicle and a fixated work scope is limiting. So that's why creating a business has been a fun adventure.
Well, I can see that from a cultural aspect in what you do. China is so expansive. Feeling as there's just so much to see, and there's really so much and so many stories to be told for a company wanting to direct its brand to China. I guess there is a certain need to be able to focus on where you want that brand communicated to.
Yeah, so you have different target demographic. And in China, oftentimes it's categorized not just by age and profession, but also by the cities you live and work in. So in China, it would be first-tier cities, Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen, so on and so forth. And then you have second-tier cities and then third-tier cities. And oftentimes your communication would be different. The content created is also different, and also your communication channels and apps.
And need to be adapted to each, right?
Yeah. So it depends on what your brand is about, your brand positioning, and pretty much
it. We feel that. We see that here in Brazil, because Brazil physically, too, is a large country, and though it's one language, there are many regional differences from north to south, east to west, and a number of regional cultural aspects that need to be considered. And I think even in branding here, that's a point. So I can see that having to be adapted to China. For most Brazilian business persons that I know, they tend to look to China also as being one thing. It's China. And to understand the tiering, as you just mentioned, doesn't necessarily come into play at the beginning.
I think that's not only from Brazil. You get that all across the world. I remember, based on what you just said, I was attending a conference in Singapore back in 2013 at their six-star hotel, Marina Bay Sands, their conference hall. And it was a collective of professionals coming from different nationalities or countries, Australia, the U.S., we had Singaporeans and then some Europeans and, myself from Taiwan. And it was through a 10-minute discussion, a Singaporean professor stood up and said to the group, because the group was thinking China as a whole.
Right.
There weren't differences between Chinese people, and the Singaporean professor stood up and said, you know what, I've been to China and they do have different types of people and ethnic groups. So you could say a brand. So I'm very familiar with American brands. Let's say a brand like Nike, right, which is renowned to most people. It's easy for them to just focus on a couple of different communications to capture their to actually send out their core message.
Right. Because
their core message is so strong. It's if you wear something from Nike, then you are you can become an athlete, or you have that motivation to become a better you.
Mm-hmm. But your suggestion to companies wanting to start in China, it's like we just said, not to take the country just one thing. Is there a region that you think is, I don't want to say easier because nothing is easy, but maybe more receptive? Is Shanghai, because of it's such a cosmopolitan city, is that a good place to start?
Yeah, you're right. Shanghai is a pretty good place to start for international brands, compared to like Beijing and Shenzhen. And we talk about this a lot. Shanghai is a good place to start because it's not only a mega city with over 24 million people, but also it embraces different cultures, and it thrives on innovation, actually. So, most of my friends in Shanghai, they like the fusion lifestyle. You have Eastern elements, but also Western elements coming together in the city. And it could be, where you get your coffee on a Monday to where you hang out over the weekend.
Yeah, I'm saying that because many of our mutual connections on LinkedIn, and really the way we connected, as I mentioned, through Julian Sisgard and Dipor Tamar Hella, who have the LinkedIn meeting groups, they mentioned that it's not the easy, but it's because of what you just said. And other persons like Michelle Wonderland, who we're connected to, they tend to be saying and have the similar outlook. So I think it can be more community-friendly for a person coming from outside of China.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Hong Kong is definitely international, but Hong Kong is still, it's an island. So if you want to really, tap into mainland, Shanghai is a good city
I
to
think
start
that's the point. We just mentioned mainland because we could talk or even Taiwan or Hong Kong. The mainland, I think, the entrance, and it's the logical entrance to China, has been Shanghai historically. So that's the way to go, and that's where you are, right?
That is where I am, and that is what works for a lot of international companies.
And we'll keep working. Well, Ev, I want to thank you. We're coming to the end of our time, but I really appreciate you taking part of your day, now your evening and my morning here in Brazil, to share your experiences with us and help us understand a little bit more about China, okay?
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for sharing your time with our listeners. And you can find more about Eva Tsui on LinkedIn, and her name is EVAHSU. And also her website, which is www.rippler.cc. I'll repeat that. It's www.rippler.cc. And I'd like to thank our audience and our sponsor, Focus MI Market Intelligence. Focus MI specializes in market research for the Brazilian agricultural market. More about them on their site, which is www.focusmi.com. Visit our website, talktobrazil.com, and find our previous shows of Talk to Brazil, as well as on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Remember, when you talk to Tom, you talk to Brazil and the world. Goodbye, and thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to Tom Reaoch on Talk to Brazil, the business connector to Brazil.